Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Okay, here we are, folks. You've been dying to know what's going on. You've been craving analysis and explanation. You want to be comforted and assured. If so, you've come to the right place. Rush Limbaugh, the EIB network, the Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Common Sense Studies, as well as anti-leftist and anti-media studies. Study everything here. Telephone number, want to be on the program, 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. Okay, so we have the North Korea situation. We have the Dreamer, the DACA situation, with the children, illegal alien children that Obama universally decreed could stay and work toward citizenship. That Trump has now put, he's canceled it in a 6-month waiting period and thrown the ball back to Congress. Okay, you people fix it. This is a fascinating, very, very teachable moment about something as relevant and important as the Constitution. So we'll get to that. We have, let's see, what's DACA, what am I still looking at? The Dreamers. Well, there's one other thing out there in addition to all this. The hurricane is what I want to lead off with, though, folks. And I've got to be very careful here because I am not a meteorologist, and nothing I say today should be considered to be a forecast or a prediction. I am not the National Hurricane Center. I am not a climatologist, a meteorologist. All I do is analyze the data that they publish. Just as I am the go-to tech guy in my family and here in the staff. When it comes to a hurricane bearing down on South Florida, I'm the go-to guy. Everybody says, what do you think is going to happen? The reason for that is that I'm not biased. And I have no agenda with my analysis of the data. The data is what it is. But I don't want to overdo this. But I do want to share with you the way I react to and listen. Do you realize here in South Florida, from where we are all the way down to Miami, you cannot buy bottled water. This hurricane, if it hits us, is not supposed to hit us until Sunday. It was never going to hit us before Sunday. Even last week when it first popped up and when the first forecast models appeared and then the Hurricane Center track forecast, it was always a 10-day out event from the first day they started forecasting it. So how in the world does panic get created? How in the world is it that there isn't any bottled water? And why does that cause a panic? Has anybody ever heard of the tap? I'm sure you have some empty bottled water or empty water bottles from previous usage. Just put them under the faucet and fill it up. It's in many ways, it's the same stuff you're buying at the grocery store. You may not know that, but it is. Tap water is entirely safe, and nobody can hoard it away from you. It's in your house every day in whatever amounts that you want. But people have been conditioned to believe that tap water is dirty, is dangerous, and might cause them to get sick. So they avoid it. If I were the big oil guys, I'd be so jealous of the big water guys. The big water guys don't have to drill for it. The big water guys do not have to spend any research and development money. They don't have to go through the environmentalist wackos. They just plug into some lake or some tap and fill up their water and put a label on it, put it at the grocery store and sell it. For more than gasoline costs in many cases. That's a side issue. The reason that I am leery of forecasts this far out, folks, is because I see how the system works. Now, I don't mean this to be a personal attack on anybody, but the one thing that's undeniable throughout our culture is that everything has been politicized. And in that sense, much of our public information system, including from the government, from the drive-by media, has been corrupted. It has been corrupted by the individual biases and whatever present bigotry of the people who hold these positions. You can see it in the way the deep state deals with Trump. You can see it with the way the intelligence community and the Washington establishment deal with Trump. So in the case of a hurricane, what happens? Well, there are many levels here. When a hurricane pops up, and we can't forget Hurricane Harvey, because Hurricane Harvey and the TV pictures that accompanied that go a long way to helping further and create the panic. Now, in the official meteorological circles, you have an abundance of people who believe that man-made climate change is real. And they believe that Al Gore is correct when he has written, and he couldn't be more wrong, that climate change is creating more hurricanes and stronger hurricanes. And, of course, when Harvey hit, it was the first hurricane that had hit in 12 years. There haven't been more hurricanes, and they're no more dangerous than any others in previous years. But it doesn't matter because the bias is built in. So there is a desire to advance this climate change agenda. And hurricanes are one of the fastest and best ways to do it. You can accomplish a lot just by creating fear and panic. You don't even need the hurricane to hit anywhere. All you need is to create the fear and panic accompanied by talk that climate change is causing hurricanes to become more frequent and bigger and more dangerous. And you create the panic, and it's mission accomplished, agenda advanced. Now, how do you do this? Well, any number of ways. Let's take South Florida television, for example. There is a symbiotic relationship between retailers and local media, and it's related to money. It revolves around money. You have major industries and businesses which prosper during times of crisis and panic, such as a hurricane, which could destroy or greatly damage people's homes, and it could interrupt the flow of water and electricity. So what happens? Well, the TV stations begin reporting this, and the panic begins to increase. And then people end up going to various stores to stock up on water and whatever they might need for home repairs and batteries and all this that they're advised to get. And a vicious circle is created. You have these various retail outlets who spend a lot of advertising dollars with the local media. The local media, in turn, reports in such a way as to create the panic way far out, which sends people into these stores to fill up with water and to fill up with batteries, and it becomes a never-ending repeated cycle. And the two coexist. Both the media benefits with the panic with increased eyeballs, and the retailers benefit from the panic with increased sales, and the TV companies benefit because they're getting advertising dollars from the businesses that are seeing all this attention from customers. And in that sense, folks, I mean, it's the way the world works. Do not miss it. I'm not accusing anybody of anything illegal here. It's just the way the world works. I don't want to mention brand names because that's not the point. Let's call it Basement Depot. Basement Depot, huge business. Basement Depot spends gazillions of dollars every year on local advertising in hurricane-forced areas. Here comes a hurricane. Local media goes on the air. Big hurricane coming. Oh, my God. Make sure you got batteries. Make sure you got water. Make sure you got... It could be the worst ever. Have you seen the size of this baby? It's already a Cat 5. Oh, my God. It's bigger than the island of Haiti. Oh, my God. People run to the stores. They stock up everything, and they hoard, and they end up with vacant stores. Nothing there. And it's a big success. TV stations got eyeballs. The advertising businesses have sold out of business, got to restock, and the cycle repeats. This is exactly what's happening. You cannot find a case of bottled water here in Palm Beach. You can't. Miami, probably even worse. Now, the Hurricane Center, how does this work? Well, There's a lot of things involved in this. The models for computer hurricanes come from meteorology departments all over the world. The UK meteorology office has a bunch of computer models. There's a whole bunch of people have. Universities have them. And these model runs happen 4 to 5 hours apart, 6 hours apart, multiple times a day. The models are publicly available. Anybody who knows how to log on to hurricane websites can see the models. And the Hurricane Center track, you can track which way the Hurricane Center, which models they believe and which ones they don't believe. Now, my theory, and it's only a theory, is that because of the biases, because of the politicization of everything, because you have people in all of these government areas who believe man is causing climate change, and they're hell-bent on proving it. They're hell-bent on demonstrating it. They're hell-bent on persuading people of it. So here comes a hurricane that's 10 to 12 days out. And here come the initial model runs. And if it's close, sometimes it's not close, and the hurricanes are going to turn north out to the mid-Atlantic, and there's no way you can fake that. But if they are going to approach a hit on the U.S., you will note that early tracks always have them impacting a major population center. Unlike UFOs, which only land in trailer parks, hurricanes are always forecast to hit major population centers. Because after all, major population centers is where the major damage will take place and where we can demonstrate that these things are getting bigger and they're getting more frequent and they're getting worse. All because of climate change. I've got the audio soundbites to support. I can't tell you the number of media people and elected officials all talking about this hurricane, Hurricane Irma. It's no doubt due to climate change. And it never ends. It just never ends. And I'm constantly on guard against it. And I've lived here since 1997, and I have developed a system that I trust, my own analysis of the data. And I'm not a meteorologist. I'm not going to tell you what mine is because I don't want to be misinterpreted as giving you well, I'm tempted to, though, because I've been exactly right since last Friday. I'm tempted to tell you because I had people asking me back then. I'm tempted to tell you, but my better judgment says don't go there. Let me just put it this way. The latest National Hurricane Center forecast map, the track, which was released at 11 a.m., puts the Sunday target exactly where I told my buddies on Saturday and Friday night that it was going to go. While the models all had it turning north up to North Carolina and Washington, D.C., and the northeastern coast. I said, and there was just one data point that I kept looking at that told me where I thought this thing was going to go. The models, my prediction of where it was going to go was not shown on but 2 or 3 outlying models. Point is, we still don't know where it's going to go. We are still, the Sunday impact in South Florida is Sunday. It's to be Sunday, so that's 6 days, 5 days. And they still can't tell us. And not that they should be able to. I mean, these things, there's too many variables. Atmospheric conditions, sea surface temperatures, and unknowns. There's just no way to predict where these storms are going to go until probably the day before. And what do you mean we're sitting ducks? What, are you in Key West? You're not a sitting duck unless you're in Key. What do you mean? Why are you a sitting duck? What are you talking about? My point, you're not a sitting duck, right? You could be a sitting duck tonight or tomorrow, depending on what they do with the track. This is another thing. Have you seen? Well, we at the current speed, we know the day is Sunday. Saturday morning, or Saturday night, Sunday morning, we know that. Unless something happens to slow it down like happened with Harvey. Once it came to shore, it stopped, and that's why Houston flooded. And nobody predicted. Well, they did predict it was going to stop. The models did predict that once it came ashore, it was going to stop for a while. They knew that. But they didn't know this week in advance. They knew it days in advance. Here's another thing. If you see the graphics of these hurricanes just depicted on TV or on the Internet, they're the giant, flaming, red. Oh, my God, Mabel, look, it's bigger than the Gulf of Mexico. We don't have a prayer, Mabel. Even if it strikes 300 miles away, we're dead, folks. What do you think the bright red area in the satellite imagery, radar imagery of a hurricane is? Mr. Snerdley, do you know what it is? No. What does the red represent? That giant blob of red. Not the center. No. I'm talking about the whole diameter, the red and the yellow and the green. What are those colors? What do they represent? No, everybody thinks it represents rainfall. That's not at all what it represents. Cloud top temperature is what those colors mean. Bright red means coldest temperatures at the top of the clouds. It has nothing to do with precip. But people don't know this. And they look at these giant graphics of these hurricanes. It's moving up. It looks bigger than Cuba. It looks like it's going to, when in fact the eye of this storm, any hurricane, on average, the real damage occurs in a 20 to 30 mile radius circle around the eye. That's where, when you hear Category 5, that's where the Category 5 winds are. They're not throughout the whole thing. They're not throughout the giant big blob. Another thing I've found, folks, these storms, once they actually hit, are never as strong as they're reported. If you look at graphics, the data you can find from sea buoys and on the ground in spots in the Caribbean where hurricanes hit before they get here, it's amazing that the actual wind speeds are never or very rarely as high as what they would be if it's genuinely Category 4, Category 5. Now, somewhere in the storm they are, but not the whole thing. The eye wall and within that's where these things are killers. It's bad. It's not a piece of cake when you're not in the eye wall, but the whole thing is not Category 5. The whole thing is not 30 inches of rain. The whole thing. It's a much more compact area of the storm. But the graphics have been created. It'll look like the ocean's having an exorcism and just getting rid of the devil here in the form of this hurricane, this bright red stuff. So, anyway, I got to take a break here. I'm up against it right before I get to the conclusion. So hang in there, be tough. We will continue with much more and all the rest right after this. Greetings, welcome back. The other issue out there, ladies and gentlemen, that we need to get to is the bombshell news that's not getting a lot of attention right now because of all the North Korea news and Hurricane Harvey, now Hurricane Irma news, the DACA news. And that's the news that James Comey had been writing memos justifying letting Hillary off the hook 6 weeks before he or anyone in the FBI had even interviewed her or any of her henchmen. In other words, Comey was already writing the exoneration memoranda. And we're told that he did this. Well, he saw Loretta Lynch go out there and have that meeting on the tarmac with Clinton, and he said, "This is bad. I gotta act as Attorney General." And the point is, he had exonerated Hillary even before he'd interviewed her. And Comey didn't. Obama did. Everybody forgets. Obama was the guy. Obama was out there. He had said back in April that Hillary didn't do anything wrong. Wasn't anything to see here. That it was really much ado about nothing. And so the signal was in. The DOJ was never going to prosecute her, no matter what. Comey had to make it look like that they took it seriously, and he listed off her crimes in that July 5th press conference as a way of self-protection. But Obama was running that whole show, whether or not Hillary was going to be pursued, and nobody was going to do that. Anyway, that's the other news that's out there, and whatever else you want to talk about. So hang on, we'll come back just a sec. It was April 6th that Obama was on television announcing Hillary had done nothing wrong. And, once Hillary's done, the President of the United States says Hillary's done nothing wrong, the message has been sent. Hillary's book is coming out. She goes after crazy Bernie. That's something also out there to get into. Anyway, to wrap up the hurricane business, folks, is simply that I wish that not everything that involved news had become corrupted and politicized, but it just has. And I'm just sharing all this with you because this is the way I look at this stuff now. And I see people being led to panic. I see people being led to hoarding. I see all of this being if not created, encouraged, and it's extremely frustrating. Time will tell, as it always does, on these storms, and where it goes and how much damage it causes, and what its eventual strength actually is. The point is that you ought to see the model tracks from Saturday. I was showing them to Snerdley today. The model tracks from Saturday it doesn't even get to the Bahamas. It doesn't even get close to the Bahamas. It curves northwest, and barely, I think only a couple of models have it touching the United States at all. And then by Sunday, it's going to eat Florida. And hello, runs on the grocery stores, and hello, no water available, hello, no batteries available, and so forth. But Rush, what are people supposed to do? That's my whole point. You can't blame people for reacting to what they're seeing. And I'm just telling you that there's a vested interest on the part of a lot of people to have, folks, the hurricane doesn't even need to strike land. The hurricane doesn't even need to hit in order for the agenda to be advanced. All they have to do is create the panic and then show you that graphic of this giant red blob that, oh my God, is going to eat the country. You see this thing? It's horrible, Mabel. Look at how big it is. And they create the fear and panic after they've already told everybody climate change is responsible for these bigger and more frequent storms. And the image is powerful, the picture, the graphic is powerful, and the fear that it might hit's all it needs. If it ends up not hitting where you are, it's somewhere else. You might temporarily breathe a sigh of relief, but you're still going to think, man, there might be something to this climate change, which, do not doubt me, is, with everything being politicized, of course it is an objective of some of the, not everybody, of course, but some of the people involved here. Now, on the DACA business, let's go back here to this audio soundbite number 1, February 22nd on this program. I talked about by the way, do you think everybody knows what this is? They call it the Dreamer Act, the DACA Act, and a lot of people, I'm not even sure. Let's run through what this is, folks, because it is the unique and distinct creation by Barack Hussein Obama. DACA, or the DREAM Act, is not part of existing immigration, or it wasn't when Obama enacted it. It is a creation of Obama. He unilaterally implemented it after failing to pass comprehensive immigration reform with Congress, meaning amnesty. It was an end run around the constitutional process for passing laws. Now, in practice, what DACA is, a temporary executive branch amnesty for certain illegal aliens who claim to have entered the country unlawfully as minors. They're children. We can't punish the children. Oh, my God. They're just not their fault. They had to come with their parents. No, they weren't coming with their parents. If you recall, folks, these were the kids that were on the mule trains and the railroads that were coming in from Central America without their parents. You remember this? And they were being settled by the federal government in various neighborhoods in Southern California. They weren't even being fully processed. They were arriving and then they were being placed by the Obama Department of Homeland Security with families all over the country. Remember this? Remember, it was a never-ending stream of children unaccompanied by their parents. And, of course, the reaction we were to have was one of great compassion and sympathy. And what we were told was it's so bad where they're Guatemala, El Salvador, these other places. It's so bad that their parents are sending these kids out alone. That's how bad it is. It's less of a risk to put them on the trains or with the coyotes than it is to leave them here. Now, the plan is, all along, for once the children get here, well, that's That's step one in having their parents admit it. Because who can keep families apart, ladies and gentlemen? What kind of society would we be that would keep families apart? So little Johnny Dreamer DACA kid gets in the country, and then his mom and dad want to come in later. And this is essentially what the program was. Executive branch amnesty for illegal children and minors who had entered the country illegally. With a pen and a phone, Obama tried to unilaterally change the immigration status of untold numbers of people. DACA gives illegal immigrants who were under 31 years old as of June 15, 2007, number one, protection from deportation, and number two, a work permit. So that's essentially what we're talking about. Now, we can go back and we can air audio sound bites of Obama claiming he didn't have this power. He was on Univision. He was did a town hall meeting on Google Hangouts, and he had people say, "Why don't you just let them in? Why don't you just open the borders and let anybody who wants to come in come? Why don't you just do this?" And Obama would say, "Well, you know, I'm not a king. We have laws here, and I just can't." But he went ahead and behaved like a king. And so the amnesty crowd now is saying essentially that the United States is responsible for so much suffering in the world that we owe the world a free trip to our country. Anybody who wants them to improve their lives, we should let them in. So here comes Trump, and he's remembering his base. The reason Donald Trump got elected, and there were many, but one of the reasons, the biggest reasons at the top of the list is his position on illegal immigration, closing the borders. So Trump was true to his base in his announcement that he was going to end the program, but in a 6-month period of time. The reason for that is because the existing law really isn't a law. It's an executive action that Obama took that's outside the Constitution. Trump is throwing it back to Congress and saying, deal with it. We've got to have an actual legislative and statutory solution to this problem. We cannot continue to go on this way. Well, the problem is that the Congress has been all over the ballpark on this. I mean, Paul Ryan, prior to Trump coming along, was dead set against this. Now that Trump is in the White House, Paul Ryan doesn't think that we should change DACA. And he's not alone. There are many Republicans in Congress who before, when Obama was president, who criticized it, thought it was untoward, thought it was unconstitutional, thought it was improper. Now that Trump is in the White House, they don't want to change it. Because this is what the Chamber of Commerce wants. This is what donors want. This is one of the many phases or stages, if you will, that gets us to full-fledged amnesty, comprehensive immigration reform. So Jeff Sessions went out and announced the administration position this morning. We will have that. Now, I advanced an idea on this way, way back in February. And it's amazing how this idea has caught on. It's got a lot of people supporting it. It's got a lot of people afraid of it. The Democrats are routinely attacking it, which means it's a great idea. I'll remind you when we get back. Don't go away. It's the Deferred Action on Childhood Arrivals. That's what DACA is, or DACA, however you wish to pronounce it. The Deferred Action on Childhood Arrivals. Now, let's go back. February 22nd, 2017, on this program, I discussed a possible compromise for the Dreamers staying in the country. Because they're children, of course, and you know the sentiments that exist toward the children. I mean, nobody wants to kick a bunch of kids out of the country, right? I don't care if they're budding little Al Capones. People just don't want to do it. It's the children. You know, the people the Republicans starve with school lunch program cuts and stuff. So nobody wants to do that. So I came up with a compromise. In order for the Dreamer thing to be acceptable, the rest of this stuff has to be by the book. No amnesty for anybody other than the Dreamers. We enforce existing law. We turn the Border Patrol agents loose to find people they already know exist and they already know where they are and deport them. People that have committed crimes, that have been accused of crimes, they're subject to deportation. People who've been convicted of committing crime. These are all people that are not citizens. They're illegally here in the first place. And deporting them is exactly according to existing law. If that happens, and if they move on the wall, if they move on strict border control, then the Dreamer thing is a worthwhile compromise. You looking at me like you're incredible. He thinks I've set off an earthquake here. I don't know what the politics are of rounding up a bunch of kids. I know each of these Dreamers has two parents, and if you have 750,000 Dreamers, that's the number, then you got to multiply it by 2 or 3. I understand all that. But even after you do that, we're not talking 11, 12, 15, 20 million here. We're not talking comprehensive immigration reform. No, I'm just saying that the Dreamers, if they're properly defined, if you properly define Dreamers and leave it at that, small price to pay to get the problem under control. And there's going to have to be some price to pay for getting it under control. I caught flack from all sides back then on February 22nd, but I caught a lot of support, too. Folks, there's nothing that tells me that in the end we're going to round up a bunch of crumb crunchers and put them back on the trains and send them out. There needs to be something gotten for it. There needs to be a price. And if this, it would be a great thing. Couple this, say, with building the wall. I mean, you go all in on border enforcement. Now, Trump has decided to end it, but there's a 6-month waiting period before it is initiated, and that ostensibly is to give Congress time to actually come up with a legislative solution. They don't want to touch it, other than to go full-bore amnesty for everybody, because that's what donors to both parties want. And I'll tell you, folks, what Trump did today via Sessions, it's almost along the same lines as pulling out of the Paris Accords. It's rocked them. They didn't think it would ever happen. Trump is not this callous. Trump is not this cold-hearted. But Trump knows his base. And he knows the impact all of this has had on the American economy and American jobs. And he's following through on one of his most predominant campaign commitments. Now, this morning on the Today Show, Matt Lauer spoke with White House correspondent Kristen Welker, NBC, about the idea that Trump was going to end the program. Matt Lauer said, what's the likelihood members of Congress can come up with a fix for this?
In the words of one top Republican who I spoke to, the fight over DACA will either unite the Republican Party or tear it apart. You have establishment Republicans who want to find a fix, but for many on the far right, they just think DACA goes against the rule of law and think it should be scrapped altogether. But there's some buzz about a potential compromise that could bring both sides together. Legislation that would, for example, fund the border wall. That's critical to Trump's base, while also preserving DACA.
See, all the way back on February 22nd, El Rushbo laid the groundwork here. And now people are starting to okay, that's a good compromise here. Now, she's wrong here. The Republican Party is being torn apart long before this thing came along today, long before the whole subject of DACA came up. The Republican Party is being torn apart by itself. The Republican Party is tearing itself apart because it doesn't have, at least on Capitol Hill, it doesn't have the wherewithal to get behind the president. For some reason, they just can't do it. Well, you know why. We've been through it, I don't know, every which way from Sunday. Thomas Loopy Friedman of the New York Times on Squawk Box on CNBC today. Question, weigh in on this Dreamer situation, Loopy. A lot of companies have come out over the weekend against what they think Trump's going to do, i.e., cancel the program. Is there a way to thread the needle here, oh brilliant one?
We need a strategic immigration policy. By the way, I'd happily give Trump his wall. My view on immigration is I'm for a very high wall. I believe a country has to control its borders. I'm for a high wall with a big gate. So assure Americans that you can control the border and then have a rational immigration policy that can attract the high IQ risk takers that have made this country, in Silicon Valley in particular, what it is, and also the high energy, lower skilled workers, and do it in a rational way. We need a compromise.
Wait a minute, did I just hear Thomas L. Friedman of the New York Times say he's for a very high wall? Did I just hear that? You just heard that. I was unaware that Thomas L. Friedman was in favor of a wall. That puts him on the same side of an issue with Trump. Now, this high IQ immigrant thing that he's talking about, see, everybody's focused on Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley, he's where all the brilliance is. Silicon Valley, they're all in favor of open borders immigration because that's where they need to get the big IQ talent. Folks, you know as well as I do what they're talking about there is the H-1B visa. And you know what that is. The H-1B visa is a way to bring in similarly educated, brilliant people from overseas and have them replace existing brilliant employees at much less pay. At the Disney Corporation, existing employees had to train their H-1B visa replacements who were going to be paid half what they were paying. So this is not as clean-cut and simple as everybody would have you believe. So glad to be back after the long weekend. I went to Missouri, spent some time with the familia, and shot a 76 at the Cape Girardeau Country Club on Sunday before hopping on a plane and heading back. 77. 77 had 6 on 18. 77. It was a fun round, great time. Anyway, we're back here. We're settled in, and we'll be back here after our top of the hour timeout sooner than you believe. The views expressed by the host on this program documented to be almost always right 99.8% of the time. It's incredible. It's going to be a long time before that moves north. That may require years of always being right, just move it up another tenth of a point, but we keep working at it. Great to have you with us, folks. As always, if you want to be on the program, it's 800-282-2882, and the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. Let me simplify this DACA business, or DACA, as it's called. Again, it's the Deferred Action on Childhood Arrivals. And in fact, looking for the Jeff Sessions sound bites. What number did I tell you those are? Right. Have those standing by. Here's the deal, folks. The same Republicans who refused to pass a DACA-like bill when Obama was in office, which forced Obama to do the executive action. Remember now, this is when the train loads of all of these kids are arriving. Do you remember this? I mean, it had the nation roiled, and it went on for 6 months, and it ended up being 800,000 kids. And I remember being suspicious of it from the get-go. How many parents like this would literally put their single-digit age kids on a train all the way up from Central America through Mexico, all the way to the United States with an unknown awaiting at the arrival? Who would do this? Parents, I mean, I don't care how culturally rotted we are. That kind of thing still seems a bit beyond the pale, yet it was happening. It was happening in droves. And the Obama administration seemed excited about it and eager. And they were foregoing being processed. They were just being taken off these trains essentially and placed in homes all over the country. And remember, all this taking place under the auspices of the Democrats' grand plan of amnesty, total amnesty for all illegal immigrants in the country at the time. Remember now, we're talking 2007, 2008, 2010, 14, any number of years. During the Obama administration, this was the dream of the Democrat Party because there is your permanent underclass. They need a permanent underclass of always dependent people ready to keep voting Democrat in order to keep the dependency coming. And the Republicans were not cooperating. They refused to pass a bill that essentially does what DACA does. Let the children, illegal alien children, certain age, stay once they get here. The fact that they refused to pass the bill is what forced Obama into doing the executive action that led to these kids became named Dreamers. And, of course, you have a name like that. How could we deny the Dreamers? How do we kick out the Dreamers? Now, the same Republicans who refused to pass a bill like this when Obama was in office are many of the same Republicans who now want to preserve it, who want to rewrite it in order to save the children. And they're doing it for two reasons. They're doing it because they want to get on the same page as the Democrats are. The Republicans would love to be thought of as compassionate. The Republicans crave being thought of like the Democrats are, compassionate and open-minded and nice and understanding. Republicans are tired of being thought of as a bunch of people that want to starve kids. So now that there is a chance, Trump has thrown the bill back to Congress. Okay, you guys have at it. They want to preserve it as it is, rewrite it as it is to save the children, which puts them in alignment with the Democrats, which will then have the added benefit of increasing voter registration for Democrats. And all of this in opposition to Trump, simply because Trump cannot be permitted a victory, especially over something like this. Milton Friedman, the great economist, said it's just obvious that you cannot have free immigration and a welfare state. Now, the left and all of their members, the left says we must have open borders. And they give as their reason social justice. And it's all rooted in this cockamamie belief the United States has spread misery and suffering around the world. And we've done it in any number of ways. Our superpower status derives from theft and consumption. We've simply gone out around the world and taken everything we wanted. We stole it from there. We stole it from over there. We took it from that group. We took it from that country. We've enriched ourselves at the expense of the world. And so the world is in dire straits because we exist as a superpower. It's not fair. It's not right that one country should have so much and the rest of the world should have so little. And so the left believes in open borders. And not just open borders. The left believes in guaranteed welfare to those who get here, one way or another. And now, have you noticed universal income is said to be the ultimate answer to the future? Universal income, you know what that is? We are a nation $20 trillion in debt. We have an additional this is going to boggle your mind, $200 trillion in unfunded liabilities. And we have people like Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates and Elon Musk and the rest of the glitterati in Silicon Valley suggesting that what we need to have here is universal income, free money. Because, of course, the future is artificial intelligence, which means robots, which means massive unemployment. Progress, technological progress must mean people will lose their jobs and be replaced by machines. And Silicon Valley doesn't want to feel guilty about that, so here comes universal income. So open borders, guaranteed welfare to those who get here one way or another, and now universal income. The ultimate answer. Now, I missed the part about unlimited revenues. Where do the unlimited revenues to pay for all this come from? Where do we get that? Well, we don't. We're not going to have the money to pay for all of this. Now, you square that. You millennials, you love sustainability. What we're doing here is simply not sustainable. We can't sustain a nation of growth and prosperity with something called free money and universal income. We just can't do it. We can't do it with open borders. You want to feed the world because the United States has led to starvation around the world? You want the world to have free health care because the United States doesn't share its great health care? You want everybody to have a guaranteed income? What, you want the world to come here for all of it? Are there no limits on it? You want the whole world to come here? Is that what our price must be? For our racism, for our slavery, for our bigotry, for our feminism, for our homophobia, for all of these ills that we have engaged in, the world must be permitted to come here? I have an idea. A little test. And I'm serious. I know a lot of you in this audience are young people. You are millennials. Some of you are college students. I know you're there. I know you're there in droves. We have the audience research to prove it. We know you're out there. And I have a little test for you. How about you're either already started school at university or it's coming up. It's very soon. Either way, have an idea. Why don't each of you take in a bunch of new roommates and provide them everything they want and need? You do it. Under the idea of fairness, under the idea that you may have more, you may have less, but you should do it. If free money, universal income, guaranteed welfare, unending health care, if this is the answer, you do it. Do a little test lab. Provide it for your roommates and see how it works and get back to us. Tell us how it works out. I mean, working millennials can't even afford their student loans, much less ESPN now. Now, the moral of the story is, when you don't have the money, you shouldn't take on obligations you can't sustain. And we don't have the money for any of this. Not to mention the morality here is all wrong, and not the fact that doing all this is really, at the end of the day, not helpful to anybody. Because all it's going to do is create people that are ill-equipped and unprepared to fend for themselves. Now, here's a fascinating story, and it dovetails with this. It's in the Politico, and the headline, Summer Employers Hired American Amid Trump Visa Squeeze. The subhead is, What Happens When Guest Worker Visas Run Out? Now, it is a fascinating story, and it goes against the grain, I think, of what the Politico intended. President Trump's harsh criticism of immigration programs and Congress's refusal to lift a cap on work visas meant that many seasonal businesses had to hire American this summer and pay their workers more. Because of Trump, there were more Americans working this summer, and they earned more money doing it, and this somehow is a problem. This somehow is bad news, and it's all because of Trump. But isn't this the objective? Many seasonal businesses had to hire Americans because the limits on visas, work visas, and they had to pay their workers more to get them to work. That's good news for Trump, it says here, for U.S. workers, good news for supporters of Trump's America First agenda, but business groups complain that increased spending on wages will ultimately cost jobs and sap company profits. Now, this is coming from the same outfit that promotes the minimum wage every other day. They promote the minimum wage, and then we say, minimum wage, artificial compensation, it's going to end up costing jobs. They deny it. Now here we have real market conditions. Not artificially imposed minimum wages, but real market conditions. I mean, why did these Americans earn more than the temporary work permit worker? Because they required it. In order to work, they were able to call for more. They were able to demand more, and they got it because companies needed the work done. This is a great teachable moment. It's such an amazing microcosm of how the world really works. And, of course, since it's good news for Trump, and since it's good news for U.S. workers, And good news for supporters of Trump's America First agenda. It can't be good news for anybody else. Because that's just the tone that drive-by media takes. Business groups complain that increased spending on wages will ultimately cost jobs and sap company When's the last time Politico gave a rat's rear end about a company's profits other than their own? When is the last time? Last time I looked, they're constantly ripping companies that make a lot of profit, like Apple and like ExxonMobil and like the pharmaceuticals. And like big retail, they're constantly ripping into these people who make a lot of profit. Now they're worried. What could be bad about American people filling seasonal jobs at higher pay? Isn't that the objective? But the real villainous thing in this sentence is the idea that people earning more money is somehow a very bad thing for businesses and a very big drag on the economy. Excuse me, but isn't this the objective? The objective is for everybody to advance. Everybody wants to earn more money. Companies want to grow. They want work to get done efficiently. If it gets done efficiently and they result in paying people more to do it and their profits expand, isn't that exactly what the intention is, theoretically, of capitalism in a big, broad sense? But here we come, and the drive-by media has to point out that Americans being hired at higher wages, that's not good. That's not good. Will ultimately cost jobs and sap company profits. Across the country, enterprises ranging from oyster shuckers to landscapers say they were forced to give up contracts and forego revenue because they just couldn't find enough workers to do the jobs this summer because Trump had ended the work visa permits. And so the cheap labor wasn't right here is why everybody wants amnesty, right here in this story. And there's another take on this. I thought, because I've been told that this is work the American people won't do anymore. That's why we need immigration. Because the American workers become a snob and he won't shuck oysters or whatever else. And yet, here were Americans filling these jobs at higher pay, and yet we're told that these menial jobs, they're beneath the average American worker. He won't do them anymore. Or that American workers are a bunch of lazy, unemployable deadbeats, too good for the minimal jobs that illegals would do. This story is Chamber of Commerce talking points. I mean, this paragraph here is just amazing. That's good news for Trump. Good news for U.S. workers. Good news for supporters of Trump's America First agenda. But bad news for businesses, which might lose profits. Again, when has the drive-by media given a rat's about that? Hi, welcome back. I'm still kind of marveling over this Politico piece. I'm not even going to mention the reporter's name because I don't want to embarrass this person, because I think this person is just talking points from the Chamber of Commerce. It's so at odds with what the usual portrayal of business and white working class Americans is in the drive-by media. This is just sap company profits. Increased spending on wages will ultimately cost jobs. What, for crying out loud? The media supports big labor. What's big labor always about? Big labor's always about more wages. Every union contract, more wages, more benefits. They're not worried about company profits being sapped. This is just this is a talking points memo here that is actually disguised as a news story. Let me get back to the phones where I haven't started on them. We'll start here with Bob in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Glad you called, sir, and it's great to have you. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, Rush. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you, sir.
I'll be brief. My thinking on the Dreamers is that they should take the citizenship test. If you're currently 16 or older, you should take it. In the event that you don't pass it, you have 3 months to pass it again. When you turn 16, you take it, or earlier if you wish.
Why do you be so mean? Why do you want, I mean, these are kids. Why do you want to force this kind of, I mean, this is a huge barrier. A citizenship test?
There are plenty of people that come from other countries and barely speak the language that are able to learn this and take the test. And if our teaching system is so good, then they should be able to easily take this test.
All right, well, what if they fail? Even after your 3-month period of time to study and learn or maybe get the answers and cheat, what if they fail? What do you do?
And that's a problem. But when we're talking about 800,000 people out of 320 million, it's not like we're talking about a large section of the population.
Wait a minute, but each of these 800,000 has at least a parent.
Then they should have an incentive.
Well,
there should be an incentive to do it.
The incentive should be, I mean, I like your idea, teach them citizenship. And a test, fine. I think it's whether or not, you just keep teaching it till they get it. And rather than, kick them out if they fail, even once or two times. But there's nothing wrong with that, having people actually become part of American culture and understand it's a good thing. Let me summarize Jeff Sessions' announcement here. We've got 3 sound bites, but time is at a premium here. He basically said that the Deferred Action on Childhood Arrivals, which is the Obama unconstitutional executive action amnesty for illegal aliens of a certain age. That's all it was. I say all it was. I mean, it's just short of amnesty for everybody. It was amnesty for people under a certain age. Deferred action on childhood arrivals. Jeff Sessions says it has been rescinded, which back when Obama put this into action, that was the position of the House Republicans. They said, you can't do this, Obama. It's unconstitutional. And they were against it. Now they're all for it. Jeff Sessions, we need a new law that takes the Dreamers into account. We need a law. We need to replace this executive action with something statutory. And so he said Congress must act. Now it's in the hands of Mitch McConnell in the Senate, Paul Ryan in the House, to address immigration law. And they really don't want any part of it. And they've got plenty else to do as it is. Now, the chairman of the Democrat National Committee, this communist leftist Tom Perez, was on TV screaming about this after Sessions made his announcement at 11 o'clock. What DACA is what all of this is to the Democrat Party. It was an advanced voter registration drive for Democrats masked as compassion and love for the children. And again, I'm sorry for being redundant, but you have to realize that people are tuning in by the hundreds of thousands every minute here, tuning in, tuning out. We're talking about this 6-month period where it seemed like train loads of unaccompanied minors from Central America were showing up, and Obama administration people were picking them up, not even processing them, just taking them and depositing them with families all over the country. I'm sure good Democrat families, and it was just an advanced amnesty program, and the whole point of it for Democrats is voter registration. For Republicans, it's cheap labor. In both parties, it's keeping donors happy. Now, it's interesting to look at the history of this from the House side. Reuters had a story back on September 1st. House of Representatives Speaker Paul Ryan urged Donald Trump Friday not to rescind DACA. More Republicans lined up against the move, Ryan and Senator Orrin Hatch Friday joined a small but growing group of lawmakers from the party that controls Congress and the White House to speak out against killing DACA, created in 2012 by Democrat former President Barack Hussein O. Now, if Ryan and company love it so much, why didn't they pass it back in 2012? And the reason they didn't is because they wanted to get reelected. They knew their base steadfastly opposed this. In fact, back in 2012, Ryan and company were screaming about Obama's illegal action from the rooftops. Ryan said, "I don't think he should do that," meaning Obama. "I believe this is something Congress has to fix." Well, it's been thrown to Congress to fix it, and they don't want any part of it now. Here is another story from the Daily Caller. Paul Ryan in 2014, executive amnesty, blatantly unconstitutional. But now he doesn't think Trump should get rid of it. 3 years ago, when Obama was blatantly unconstitutional, but now that it's in there, Trump should leave it alone. We don't want to rescind this. So, look, I don't want to spend all day on this, but that pretty much gets us up to speed on where this is. There's now a 6-month period of time for Congress to take this hot potato and do something with it legislatively and either create a new law that does something everybody can agree with the Dreamers, or not. And they don't want to touch it. This is what's kind of... It's not funny, but it is, in a way. Bobby in Shreveport, Louisiana, you're next. It's great to have you. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well. Very, very well.
Rush, on the idea of giving amnesty to these Dreamers in order to get a wall, it struck me that we just won the election on building a wall. Why would we offer a bargaining chip of amnesty when we hold the cards? I mean, the liberals should be begging us for mercy. Not the other way around. I mean, I know Paul Ryan's afraid of Hispanics or whatever, but a lot of these people are never going to vote for Republicans because they've been had it beaten into them by the media that we're anti-Hispanic and this and that. These might just be children, but they're going to have children too, and they're going to be competing against our children in the future for jobs and scholarships and whatever. So this is exactly not what MAGA is all about. This is not what we voted for.
Well, no. I understand that. My idea back in February was February. I mean, things are blowing up at Trump, and the lines of opposition were forming, and the bobbleheads of opposition were popping up. They were everywhere, but the kids were here. It no longer was a theoretical argument. The Dreamers were here. And they are young children. And I could not envision them being rounded up and sent back home. I couldn't see that happening. I couldn't see the United States doing that. I certainly couldn't see Trump doing it. So I was thinking, okay, since Obama got this one, he did this with an extra constitutional executive action, there's got to be a price for that. That was the sole basis for my compromise. And I was not trying to say that this depended on the wall being built. I was trying to propose it as a negotiating point for Trump, as an idea. He's the guy with the art of the deal. He's the guy that can take bullet points and make them into a vast negotiation presentation to dazzle and wow everybody. And there was opposition to the wall, as you and I knew there was going to be. And Trump knew there was going to be. But I understand you won the election and you think the wall should be built anyway, regardless what happens with the Dreamers. And I agree with that. But remember here, Trump's biggest opposition here in Washington is not the Democrats. I know that they've got 8 votes in the Senate that basically control the Senate. But Trump's big problem or obstacle is his own party. And we've been through that every which way but Sunday. And you can see it here in the contradictions. Back in 2014 when Obama did this, the Republicans in leadership screaming, "You can't do it, it's unconstitutional." We don't want any part of it. You can't do that, because they had to get reelected. Now that it's the law of the land, they don't want to get rid of it, which means they don't want to do any heavy lifting, which means they didn't expect to be in this position, meaning winning the presidency. They didn't expect their party to be running Washington. I don't offer that as an excuse. Anyway, I appreciate the call. Let me take a brief timeout. We'll be back. We will continue. There's are any of you watching Narcos? Netflix. Well, this is season 3. It premiered on Friday. It was about Pablo Escobar and the cocaine trade. He ran of course, the Medellin cartel. And then Pablo Escobar was killed on the rooftops, and a quartet of cocaine leaders led by the Rodriguez brothers essentially took over, and they became the Cali cartel. Well, season 3 deals with the Rodriguez brothers and the other two that formed the 4-person leadership, and what happened to them and the DEA's efforts to bring them to heel. And it's a good show. I mean, it's one of these things that's fiction, but it's really, really close to actual events. Minor things changed here and there, and the critics love it. I must confess, I watched all 10 episodes over the weekend. But that's not the point. The point is there's something that happened in this that the media's going crazy over. They just love it. It's one of the greatest things that's ever happened in television, if you listen to the critics. So are you watching? I'll tell you, you watching Narcos? You guys haven't seen Narcos? Well, it's good. I mean, it's rough. It's brutal. It's gory. It's got all the it's an R type of thing, but it's good. It's a good production. Pedro Pascal is one of the lead characters. He played Oberyn Martell in Game of Thrones, and a couple other things. Anyway, let me take a break. I'll tell you what the media is going nuts over on this show when we get. It'll make total sense when you hear it. Half my brain tied behind my back just to make it fair. El Rushbo, America's real anchorman. I got an email note. Rush, don't you know it's discriminatory and racist, it's white supremacist to expect immigrants to pass a citizenship test? If you are going to demand that young immigrants know the history of this country, don't you realize that you are teaching racism, white supremacy, white privilege, and Nazism? And I had to stop. That's exactly right. Well, I mean, it's what the left says. That's how the left is categorizing America. That's why we can't teach citizenship, because there's nothing worthwhile about this nation's history that's worth being taught. We want because so they can vote. We want them to become citizens so they can vote Democrat. No. This is the point of the Antifa bunch. Anyway, I'm sorry. I shouldn't laugh here. Harvard president slams cruel Donald Trump for ending DACA. Outgoing Harvard University president Drew Gilpin. Do you know what the Harvard endowment is? 32. The Harvard endowment is $32 billion. They ought to be giving away tuition to half the students every year. $32 billion, and they're still begging for donations. And anyway, the outgoing Harvard University president, Drew Gilpin Faust, is a Civil War historian, and you know what that makes him. Oh, he hates Robert E. Lee, hates the Stars and Bars, hates the South. It's obvious. It's a must. I mean, that's a requirement. if you're going to be a Civil War historian at Harvard. Anyway, he has denounced Trump's decision to end the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program and vowed to lobby for it to continue. This cruel policy recognizes neither justice nor mercy, Faust wrote in an email to the Harvard Crimson. So the college president's writing the student newspaper. In the months to come, we will make every effort here at Harvard to have our voice heard in the halls of Congress and elsewhere about the need for the protections of DACA to continue. Now, according to the Harvard Crimson, 65 Harvard students are indeed DACA beneficiaries. Meaning what? They were brought here illegally as children, meaning they do not have legal residency in the United States, meaning they were admitted to Harvard ahead of U.S. citizens, ahead of legal immigrants, and ahead of eligible international students who might otherwise have qualified for Harvard, but 65 places have been taken by DACA students. There's something else here in the stack about Harvard that you are going to love. Let me see if I could find this. I didn't. This is a late arriving story, so I don't have it in order. It is about the percentage of LBGT or transgender or some such. Let me look for it and find it later. Here's the Netflix and Narcos story. One of the four bad guys, one of the primary four bad guys in season 3 of Narcos is gay. A gay drug lord. And and he was. It's factually correct. He was openly gay. The four-headed monster of the Cali Cartel. And the media is praising this as a great, great advance for homosexuality and the gay cause to have such a brave portrayal as a gay drug king. In other words, the media, I mean, they're really going overboard praising this. If you read the reviews that I do, and I read everything, they are praised. This guy is a murdering drug lord. This guy is a cruel SOB. And they're praising this guy for being out. And they're praising the producers for being more accepting of this kind of gay portrayal in 2017. And it's just, to me, it is amazing that it is so important to advance in the media the gay agenda, that even if the character is a murderous thug, the people who write the program and act it and produce it are treated as heroes. And it's said to be a wonderful advancement for the gay cause. And I thought, it just leaves me scratching my head. Really? It's an advancement of the gay cause to have an openly gay character who is a... Yes, sir, Bob. Here we are, my friends, making more sense than anything anybody else out there happens to be saying. Rush Limbaugh, your guiding light, America's real anchorman. Available at 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushmo@eibnet.us. You know, the extreme weather circumstance, last week and the week prior, it was Houston and Hurricane Harvey. And, of course, the people, I found something fascinating. When I did not live in Florida, when I lived in Missouri growing up, or when I was in Pittsburgh, when I was in Nuevo Orleans, and then out in Sacramento, you see the weather forecasts of hurricanes, but when you live in a place, you know that they're not going to hit. There just isn't any personal stake. Now, if you have family where they're going to hit, you have some connection to it. But it's nothing like actually living in a target area. And this week, we have the big bullseye painted on us. All the hurricane models, well, not all, because there are now so many of them that you can't keep track of them, but the reputed high-class models, the ones that have been around a long time, respected and used, one way or another have South Florida in the crosshairs. And so everybody here is explicably, understandably, totally focused on that. Grocery store runs, there's nothing there now. There's no bottled water. For those of you, by the way, in panic, there's this thing in your kitchen called a sink. And at the sink, there's this thing called a faucet. And what you should do, if you like bottled water, is when you finish a bottle of water, don't throw the bottle away. You put that bottle underneath that thing called the faucet, and you turn it on. And water will come out and end up in the bottle, and you'll have bottled water. Much like the water you buy in the bottle in the store anyway. It's perfectly drinkable. Perfectly fine. It may not be vitamin enriched, but how do you know the bottle stuff is? And it may not have a bunch of electrolytes in it, but it's water. God made, God created, has everything necessary in it to keep you from being dehydrated. So it's there, even if you can't find it at the grocery store. So you don't need to panic over the water. But Rush, when the hurricane hits and the water stops and the water... Well, I understand that, so you should keep your empty bottles and fill them up from the tap. If Sam's Club's out, if Costco's out, if Whole Foods, does Whole Foods sell whole water? Whole water, whatever. I'm sure you can find gallon jugs. When you finish your low-fat skim milk, rinse it out, fill it up with water. Put it in the fridge and keep it chilled until the hurricane. There's ways around this. Well, rain barrel. You get a rain barrel. But that's not an immediate fix or solution to the stores being out of water. When did bottled water become fashionable? How long ago was it that it was Evian was first, was it not? Evian. Yeah, prior to the 80s, the water that you drank came from the tap. It's perfectly fine, is the point. Anyway, airline flights getting out of South Florida are, I think Miami's sold out. I think Miami, exits out of Miami are sold out. Which, look, I totally understand. My point to you is, folks, that even though we are all here, we at the EIB network are all in the crosshairs, we have that bullseye painted. We are going to be devoted the usual 125% of this program to you. We're not going to turn this program into crying over spilt milk. We're not going to do 3 hours of, oh no, what are we going to do? Oh God, it's headed for us. Oh my God, none of that here. You won't hear that here. And if it does happen here, you won't hear it because there aren't any microphones in there. So I just want you to know that even though we here are in the crosshair, you are going to get the full-fledged, come-to-expect-it, 125% effort every day, the EIB network that you get when there is, it already is. They're asking me if I have a way. I've already arranged it. Well, look, the program has to go on. You know how easy it would be? I could sit here and say, you know what, I'm going to stay. I'm going to ride this out, my friend. But what if, and I would, if it weren't for the fact that we're going to lose electricity. If we lose electricity, then there's no way we can get the show done out of here. Now, what are you laughing at in there? You think I'm making this up? I'm not. I'm just telling you that if we have generator, but that I think it's, well, I don't want to give away how it's fueled. That's a security breach. But there are just too many variables when I could go someplace and have no concerns. Because I guarantee you, people outside of South Florida aren't going to care. They're going to be hurricaned out. Harvey, and now what this is, Irma. People are going to be begging for budget news. Yes, I know there's another storm out there. big red X on the Hurricane Center map, right? Giant big X. Another global warming destructive force is brewing. Yes, I know the drill. Jose, that would follow because J comes after I. So Harvey, Irma, Jose. Hurricane Jose. Yeah, wait till La Raza hears about that. Of course, they actually, depending on where it hits, they might support it. Anyway, I found that additional story on Harvard I was looking for. Bisexuals are 400% more prevalent in Harvard freshmen than the general population. Yes, I know you. Why does anybody know? How does anybody know? Well, let's find out together. It's a story from the Daily Caller. Bisexuals are... Hang on a minute. Had to clear my throat there. Bisexuals are at least 400% more prevalent, the incoming class at Harvard, than they are in the general population. While approximately 1.8% of the U.S. population identifies as bisexual, 7.9% of Harvard's class 2021 says they are bisexual. Wait a second. 1.8% bisexual. What is the gay population? 0.6? 0.5? And the transgender population, I mean, it's less than 0.1% of 1%. And yet, look at all that we are doing to accommodate it. While approximately 1.8 identify as bisexual, 8% of Harvard's class say they are. The sexual orientation disparity is not the only one revealed by the Harvard freshman survey. The school's percentage of admitted bisexual students has grown over the past 4 years. Bisexuals comprise 2.5% of the 2017 class, 4.9% the 2019 class, and 5.7% the percent in 2020. The percentage of heterosexuals, admitted heterosexuals. Wait a minute. Are there people who don't admit this? Do you know any heterosexuals who don't admit it? Well, that's what it says here. The percentage of admitted heterosexuals hovered around 90% for the Harvard class of 2017, but has fallen to 82.4%. The Daily Caller reached out to Harvard for comment, but didn't get anything back. What is there to say? Our greatest, oldest, richest university has a freshman class teeming with what? Bisexuals? Oh, well. American manufacturing expanded in August at the fastest pace in 6 years. You think this is because of DACA? I don't think so. American factories accelerated in August at the fastest pace of expansion since 2011, according to data from the Institute for Supply Management. The monthly Purchasing Managers Index rose 2.5 points, 58.8, reflecting employment rising to its highest level in 6 years. The sustained gains in manufacturing reflect rising consumer spending and business investment. Really? You know, everywhere you turn, and I'm not exaggerating, everywhere you turn, the economic news is wonderfully improved over what it was during the 8 years of Obama. Even that political story we had earlier today, where because of the fewer number of illegal aliens being granted work visas, summer jobs went to Americans at higher rates of pay. Now, the Politico had a problem with that because of the impact on corporate profits, if you can believe that. But wherever you look, employment is up, wages are up, manufacturing expanded in August at the fastest pace in 6 years. What's the difference? What has changed? Not just from Obama to Trump, but there are other things that have. What's changed? I think there's a general overall attitudinal shift. I think Folks, those 8 years of Obama were a downer. They were, to a lot of people, depressing. They were stifling because everybody that pays attention knew that if Obama were ultimately successful, we weren't going to have an American economy that we had grown up with or were accustomed to by design. We were going to be a country that would have to learn how to manage our decline, a decline that was deserved because our economic triumphs of the past were not legitimate. They were not legitimately earned. They were earned on the backs of the poor or on the backs of poor countries or whoever else that we had exploited. And it wasn't really genuine. And it was time the U.S. got cut down to size a little bit, learned how the rest of the world lived, and Obama was all about that. And with Obama and the Democrats out of office, make no mistake about this. The drive-bys will never catch on to this, and the people inside the Beltway, the establishment, will never catch on to this. But with the departure from leadership of Obama in the White House and Democrats on Capitol Hill, I'm telling you, it had a monumental effect on the overall attitude of millions of Americans. It turned them immediately optimistic. And then Trump is inaugurated. Well, the transition occurs, and the Democrats and the deep state and the media go nuts. They lose their minds on Trump. And this just cements support for Trump even harder, despite what their polling data says. Selena Zito is back after having made another trip into Pennsylvania, where she has once again scouted Trump voters, and she reports that people are rooting for Trump more than ever. Do you know there's surveys out there, polling data out there now, that Trump has an approval number higher than Congress and the media combined? Forget what Trump's approval number is in the drive-bys. By comparison to Obama, of course, it's dismal. And the drive-bys use it to say that the country is embarrassed of Trump and it's horrible and wrong. But when you look at the comparative data, you find that Trump's approval number is more than twice what the media and journalism and Congress approval number combined are. In other words, Trump is more liked. Trump is more approved, has higher approval than Congress or the media, even when you combine them. Selena Zito reported in Pennsylvania, in this part of the U.S., people are rooting for Trump even more. Here's some numbers for you. This is why the Republican Party is making one of the biggest mistakes it's made in my lifetime. The Republican Party gained 100,000 new registered voters in Pennsylvania, including 31,000 new registered Republicans in Philadelphia. Philadelphia. In the past few months, a CNN producer and a star of the TV show Scandal have called people who voted for Trump stupid. Their contempt has registered with people that voted for Trump, and it's only served to escalate their commitment to Trump. Well, no, it was what was this guy's name? Molina, the guy that on Scandal who plays the Attorney General. I forget his name. But he's out there, and of course, the CNN producer, well, hell, everybody at CNN, they're out there calling, Hillary calls them deplorables. The other people are calling them idiots. How could you be so stupid to vote for Trump? And the Trump voters hear this stuff, and it doesn't shame them. It doesn't embarrass them, because they don't care about appealing to the media. It just cements them even deeper with Trump. Here's another pull quote. Despite his flaws, Trump voters are waving the flag for their underdog candidate in a show of defiance. Many don't even think he's on the ropes, and they believe that he will eventually triumph and get results. Customers are still coming into. There's a man profiled in the story named Moyer. And his customers are still coming into his shop requesting pro-Trump signs for the first time, wanting to show their support. They want us to. In other words, all of this savage attack on Trump in Trump country, in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, some of these other formerly blue states, it is backfiring on the Democrats. They don't even know it yet, although I think they do, because of this. Nancy Pelosi says the voters don't want to hear us criticizing the president. That is a quote. The voters don't want to hear us criticizing the president. This was a choice. They made a decision. And to criticize the president personally is to disrespect their judgment. So I say to my members, this is about what we're going to do. She was talking to the editorial board and reporters at the Denver Post about the Democrat agenda. They know, folks. They know that all this Antifa stuff, they know that all of this mobilized hatred and all of the words of filth and hatred aimed at Trump, they know it's backfiring on them because they know they haven't. Well, they don't have an agenda. They don't have an agenda they can be honest about. They may not even have an agenda other than get back power. But anyway, I got to get back to phones, and we'll do that after this break. Don't go away. Who's next on the phones? Where are we going now? We're going to San Angelo, Texas. You know what I love about San Angelo? You've got to be going there to get there. You will not accidentally run into San Angelo. The Houston Oilers used to have training camp there now and then. This is Linda, and it's great to have. How you doing, Linda?
Thank you. I'm fine. I'm a faithful listener, and I rely on you, Rush, to separate fact from fiction.
Well, I appreciate that, and I love the fact that you're from Texas.
That's right. I'm from Texas. It's my understanding that there's two groups of people that fall under DACA. You have the original dreamers that were here prior to Obama bringing in the young people from primarily Central America countries.
Right, Guatemala, El Salvador, right.
Yeah, and they're treated very differently. The original dreamer, what we call the original dreamers in Texas, don't qualify for any kind of governmental support. And when they graduate from high school, they have to apply for right-to-work permits, and a lot of them are working under those permits currently. Then you have the people that Obama brought in, the young people that Obama brought in, that do qualify for financial aid. So they're treated kind of differently, and so you get mixed feelings about what to do.
Well, you know one of them, right?
Yes.
Well, go ahead. I've got 1 minute. I'm trying to get you to the.
Yes, we know a young man that was brought here at the age of 4. He's now 23. He graduated from high school, and he is on right to work permits.
Right, and so you can't see this kid being deported. He didn't do anything. He didn't even know what happened when he got here. Right.
Right. So his fear is, well, if they do away with it, does that mean my right to work permit goes away? Because he doesn't speak Spanish. He doesn't know anyone in Mexico.
Right. Okay, let me deal with that. We have to come back because this is exactly why I proposed my compromise. Because people like this, a 4-year-old is now a high school student, soon to graduate. There's no way people want to say. By the way, wait till you hear the soundbite I have coming up. Sarah Huckabee Sanders here at the press briefing. If I didn't know better, I'd say I'm running the policy at the White House. You'll see what I'm talking about. Hi, welcome back. Great to have you, folks. El Rushbaugh on the cutting edge of societal evolution. Here's, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Press briefing. Grab audio soundbite number 1. Grab audio soundbite number 1 from today. I think it's 1. This is where me, back in February, offering a solution. Here it is. In order for the dreamer thing to be acceptable, the rest of this stuff has to be by the book. No amnesty for anybody other than the dreamers. We enforce existing law. We turn the Border Patrol agents loose to find people they already know exist and they already know where they are and deport them. People that have committed crimes, that have been accused of crimes, they're subject to deportation. People who've been convicted of committing crime. These are all people that are not citizens. They're illegally here in the first place. And deporting them is exactly according to existing law. If that happens, and if they move on the wall, if they move on strict border control, then the dreamer thing is a worthwhile compromise. You looking at me like you're incredible. He thinks I've set off an earthquake here. I don't know what the politics are of rounding up a bunch of kids. I know each of these dreamers has two parents, and if you've had 750,000 dreamers, that's the number.
Okay, that's enough.
That's enough. We got to the point. So at the press briefing this afternoon, Sarah Huckabee Sanders got a question from Major Garrett, or Lieutenant Garrett, depending on how you see him day to day. He said, look, in the context of DACA as a piece of legislation, would the president be willing to sign something that only addresses that? Or would it also need to have components of the RAISE Act? And would there maybe possibly be funding for the border wall thrown into it?
The president wants to see responsible immigration reform, and he wants that to be part of it. But again, we can't take just a one-piece fix.
There it is. She said Trump wants the wall to be part of the process. Even with a hurricane bearing down on the EIB network, still able to foresee future. What do we have? I'm looking for. I've got a funny bit here from Fredo Cuomo, but I've got the cue sheets all out of order. Let me go to Edward in Minneapolis. Edward, welcome. Great to have you on the program. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Rush. First-time caller, long-time listener. My biggest concern here is the Obama holdovers. The layer beneath the cabinet. And the Senate hasn't moved on filling these positions. There's a huge vacuum below there. So who's going to get all this stuff done and get it done expeditiously? Because we've got the deep state here. How quickly can they implement the Trump policies, and why isn't McConnell getting these things done? Why aren't these positions getting filled? It's just frustrating.
Well, Trump was asked this question the other day about all of the unfilled positions, administrative and such, in his administration. He said, hey, that's because we're cutting back on the size of government. We got jobs. We don't need these jobs filled. And some people had to react. You do need to fill them. You need to fill them with people who are on your side to nullify some of these deep state people in there from these Obama and Hillary holdovers that have not gone anywhere. Now, and I agree with you on that. I don't think there has been enough attention paid.
Yeah, it's troubling.
Well, it is. Now, what was your question about McConnell? Because this,
he should be doing his duty to the party and getting people in these jobs that are supposed to be.
Oh, you mean the confirmation process?
Yes.
Well, the Democrats can hold up a number of confirmations as they have. That you look. I'm not trying to start fires here, Edward, but when you say McConnell deserves to be doing his duty to his party, in his mind, he may be. Doing the duty of the party might be denying Trump the tools necessary to succeed.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying here?
I mean,
the Republican Party, the Democrat Party, they're all part of the establishment. Trump's the outsider. Look, I've said this so many times, I'm sure people getting mad. See, look at that. Well, it's gone now. Not that one. They've got a graphic of that hurricane that's bigger than the state of Florida on this map on CNN. The whole hurricane is not bigger than the state of Florida. But that's how they make it look. Anyway, I'm sorry for being redundant here, folks, but this is human nature, and it's true not just in Washington. It's true with any group of people who think their club is elite and special. Outsiders are not welcome. And if outsiders force their way in and want to revolutionize the way the group does things, the group and its legacy members are going to fight it left and right, because the last thing any group needs is an outsider coming in and vastly improving the way the club operates and what the club does. Now, in the case of the Washington club, and it's a club, folks, The Washington establishment is a club, and it owns virtually every aspect of what goes on in that town. And what's the primary purpose of Washington? What would you say is the real purpose of Washington, D.C.? Now, you're going to argue with me about this, but I think it boils down to money. Sure power, sure ideology, sure ideas, but Washington, D.C. is the most powerful city in the world. Washington, D.C. is the wealthiest city in the world because of the IRS, because of tax collections, and because of whatever the government sells in armaments and things like this. And every year, how many trillions of dollars pour through the Washington area, through the Treasury Department, and everybody there, one way or the other, is trying to get their hands on as much of it as they can. Not all for personal use. You've got lobbyists who are trying to advance the cause of their clients, but they do want to get paid when it's over. Whenever there is big money present, you cannot discount it. It must be a prime factor in your analysis of what the club or the group is doing. Now, in the case of the Washington Club, they've been around for how many hundreds of years? Let's say they've been, just to make it simple, they've been around 50 years. It's longer, but let's just use 50 years. And they've got a certain way of doing things. They've got a certain pace. They've got a certain stature, a certain agenda, certain aura, certain image. And one of the things is that things happen real slow. Things happen real slow. Like it's been 30 years since tax reform. 30! 1986 was the last significant tax reform. 30 years. Why? Well, that's just the way it is. Why? We just can't move that fast. Well, here comes an outsider, Donald Trump, who in 3 months wanted to totally turn it upside down, reform taxes, simplify. You think they're just going to sit there and let this happen? They've got all these years of evidence of what you can and can't do there, and they're the experts, and then they're going to let some outsider wins an election despite their best efforts come in here and demonstrate that you can actually do tax reform inside of a couple of months. They're going to let that happen if they can help it. That's what Trump is up against. Much more than that, too, but that's a simple explanation of what he's up against. And he does need all kinds of people around him who understand that and are able to push back against it. And all these people in his administration, somewhere in there, even in the White House, leaking these things. Who leaked that letter that Obama wrote him? You hear about this? Obama wrote that letter to be leaked. That's the whole. Saw through that the minute I read the darn thing. There was no doubt in my... Well, I just saw that officials in Miami-Dade County are thinking of asking some of the people who live there to start evacuating as early as Wednesday. That's unofficial, but I think it's going to be pretty close. I just saw that now. Not enough time to delve into it, but you'll probably be hearing about it in due course. See you tomorrow, folks.